So Mad Maxx Crosby himself ended up with a wild day. He ended up with 4 sacks, pretty incredible, and it was really cool to see just how he got those sacks as well. It's definitely been pretty cool to see him, play his game. I mean, he's now at 6.5 sacks for the season, which is actually more than Khalil Mack, which is a stat that's been getting thrown around a lot, but also a huge part of that was just by getting 4 sacks in a single game. He played really well. I mean, the first I really started to pay some serious attention to was when he got drafted by the Raiders, and in his preseason games, he was looking good out there. I actually kind of gave him half a video in the preseason, him and Furl. But honestly, he's played very well this entire season, and he had himself quite a pretty dominating performance against the Bengals. He really helped take over that football game, especially with the fact that 3 of his 4 sacks came in the fourth quarter. So when they needed him to come through, he came through, and he came through in a big way. And also worth mentioning for Oakland, I mean, what do people always say? It's not about necessarily where you draft, but how you draft. Get good talent wherever you're picking, and that's what they've done. Well, I personally criticized the move to go with Furl over Josh Allen. I didn't hate the move, and Furl has played fine. You also got Josh Jacobs, who's looking like an offensive rookie of the year, and who knows, if Crosby can step it up, he could end up creeping into that defensive player of the year category, although he definitely has some catching up to do with how well both Josh Allen and Nick Bosa have played. But let's just jump into it. His first sack was actually pretty remarkable. It's going to be this one. What's going to happen is he's going up against a left tackle, but really what's key here is what's going to happen, the first step, because oftentimes in these situations, that first step and the first move a defensive end makes, that can make all of the difference. So watch how very early on, he is going to kind of lunge out to the right a little bit. I mean, you see him right now, he's clearly stepping pretty far over to the right, and not going to allow his opposing tackle to really get good hand placement right here. Because if you look, I mean, the tackle, where would you want to get that left hand? It's not going to be where it is. You would rather get it basically on the complete opposite side of Crosby. You want to essentially get it somewhere onto Crosby's right side of his body, ideally a pec or a shoulder pad, but at least if you can get it somewhere in that area, you'd be okay. But he's nowhere close right now. I mean, because Crosby moved so far over, all you can really do at this point is kind of just get your hands on his shoulder pad just that's closest to you and kind of just try to push him out that way. It's a bad situation, especially since he's on the blind side right here. However, the one bright spot for Cincinnati is you can sit here and say, well, at least he's getting pushed pretty far out of the way, and while he won't get blocked too much, it'll take him some time to get to our quarterback. But Maxx Crosby is so fast, he's still going to be able to run over and get to Ryan Finley for a sack. Finley even ends up fumbling the football. It's just a great play by Crosby, and that's just kind of what he can bring to the table. He's just a great pass rusher, which for a 4th-round pick, getting a great pass rusher is great drafting. I mean, really getting anybody who can contribute in the 4th round or later is great, but getting someone who could be not just a starter, but a Pro Bowl type player, I mean, that's what you love to see as a Raiders fan, and it's a sign of a well-run organization. It's a sign of a team that's drafting well to get those later picks still be able to be successful. I'm kind of reminded of the Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom defense, and I think about all of the guys on that team that were later round picks that ended up being successful. Obviously, probably the most notably being Russell Wilson, the 3rd-round pick, but even like a Richard Sherman was a 6th-round pick. That's how you can be successful in the NFL, is drafting well, and that's what the Raiders have done. And it's not just his speed that he can beat you with either. Like on this play, what you're going to notice is that there's going to be 5 Raiders on the line, so typically what you would expect is that one would drop back into coverage. Usually it would be one of the guys on the edge, so either one of the 2 guys that are farthest away from the middle of the field. And so in this situation, Cincinnati, they think it might end up being Crosby who's going to step away. That's where Crosby is. And so what they're going to start off doing is actually having their left tackle and left guard double team that Raider right there. However, very early on, their tackle is going to realize, oh, okay, that's not what's happening. I have to get back over because Crosby is clearly rushing the passer here. He is not dropping back into coverage. And so when he does get back, he's in front of Crosby, but he doesn't have the best hand placement, and Crosby already has a pretty significant head start. But again, this is the type of situation where oftentimes when you have your least good pass rusher, or at least a 4th-round pick that becomes a pass rusher in this situation, they're not able to win that matchup. But not Crosby. He's just able to power through and get to Ryan Finley for a sack. It was kind of a little bit of a mistake by Cincinnati double teaming someone when they probably shouldn't have, but At the same time, what do you do as a defensive player? What do you do as just a player in general? Something I've been saying in pretty much every video I've ever made. It's you take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. That's what Crosby did on that play, and it's also what he's going to do on this play, where what's going to happen is it's going to be play action, and then what's going to happen is that Finley is going to keep the ball himself and roll out to the right side of the screen. And so because he's going to do that, this now means that Crosby right there, they're actually going to leave him unblocked, which is typically something you will do on this play. You leave that edge rusher unblocked because you expect him to then think, okay, I'm unblocked, it's probably a run in the opposite direction of me. He would run to the left side of the screen, and then Finley could easily run out to the right side of the screen and have plenty of time to make a throw. And even if Crosby reads this correctly and runs down to the bottom of the screen quickly, then Finley can simply just continue running backwards and then throw the ball away, so it wouldn't be great, but still not a disaster. However, Crosby's going to turn it into a disaster. Watch how quickly he gets to Finley there. Finley doesn't have any time to react. Crosby maybe even saw a tell earlier to let him know this was what the play was going to be, but he very quickly saw what the play was able to get to Finley and get his third sack of the day. I almost feel bad for Ryan Finley. I mean, it was not his best day at the office, to say the least. He ended up going 13 for 31 with just 115 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. It was definitely a rough one for him, and it really wasn't all his fault. He doesn't have the best offensive line, to say the least. He was getting terrorized all day, and a good portion of that was just Maxx Crosby just really playing very well. So, okay, you have a guy terrorizing you. What do? Typically, you'll chip him. You'll get a halfback to run out and just chip him. Well, that means that, as you see 25 right there, he's going to basically just push Crosby, but then continue on running his route. So, it's not quite a full double team necessarily, but it is now getting some extra pressure onto Crosby and making things much more difficult for him, because then the tackle can get over. He should be able to get good hand placement, and it's just going to make things a lot tougher for Crosby. It's oftentimes a great sign of respect in a ways when you get chipped, because it's saying that the other team is making a conscious effort to make sure that you don't get to your quarterback very quickly. So that's what's happening right here, and as you see right when the ball is snapped, the chip works out pretty well. Crosby is not going to be able to get down to the bottom half of the screen very quickly, so now it's kind of a good situation for Cincinnati. However, Crosby's an aware player, and he looks up and looks at the center, and the center is going to creep over to the right side of the screen and block any Raider in that area. So that gives Crosby an idea. Watch what he's going to do here. He breaks over in between the guard and the center and is able to just barely get Finley down. So, I mean, really, that's just a very aware play more than anything. Obviously, it was a great physical play, just the fact that he was able to get to Finley so quickly, but also a very aware play to realize I can run through there, and also the skill of being able to get there quickly so Finley can't run to the outside, because you are giving up containment on this play. If Finley was able to get outside the pocket, well, then Finley could potentially have as long as he wants to make a throw. So it was going to have to be executed perfectly by Crosby, but it was, and it led to his 4th sack of the game. And also one more play I liked. This actually isn't even a pass rush play, but it was still a play I liked. What's going to happen is it's going to be a run to the right side of the screen, and for Crosby, he's going up against a tight end here. So as an edge rusher in the running game, you do have to be able to win your own one-on-one matchup against a tight end. You just have to. And for Crosby, watch how he goes about doing it. He just takes that first step to the left side of the screen, and that's all he needs right here. I mean, you might say, well, wait a second, there's obviously something that can happen here for Cincinnati, but no, this play's over and the Oakland Raiders are going to get a win on this play. Because think about it, if you run into the gap that Crosby has now taken away, well, then you're not really going to gain many yards. Maybe you'll gain 1 or 2, but probably not. And because of that Oakland Raider right there, this now means that if you break it to the outside, which is what's going to happen here, well, then he can just run over and make a tackle as he does. There was no way that play was going to go for a lot of yards. It ended up going for just 1, and it was entirely set up by Crosby. That's all that was set up by. So yeah, I mean, that's just what you love to see as a Raiders fan, is just a guy who can just play smart, good football, and also just being very physically good. I mean, that speed is not easy to get. Oftentimes, a speedy pass rusher like that goes in the top 10, let alone just in the 4th round. But when you can get a top 10 talent in the 4th round, you have to find a way to get him. It's pretty remarkable what the Oakland Raiders are doing right now. I mean, the way that they've drafted, they've totally set themselves up nicely. They're currently just a half game behind the Chiefs for a playoff spot, and assuming they beat the Jets next week, they will then be tied going into a game against Kansas City in Arrowhead, which will definitely be a big-time matchup. They're looking to make the playoffs, but even if they fall just short this season, the fact that they have 2 first-round picks, one of which will be a very good first-round pick that the Chicago Bears would have had if they didn't trade away Khalil Mack, and also the fact that they have Jonathan Abram coming back, who has been hurt all season. So they're definitely set up very nicely for 2020 when they go to Vegas. But even here in Oakland, it would be cool to see them, make the playoffs. Just give the Oakland Raiders fans one last playoff game. Although a home playoff game seems a little bit tough. Who knows? I mean, you're definitely circling the day on the calendar you play the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll be a huge game. But in terms of Maxx Crosby, he stepped up very well. Very cool to see that happen. You always like to see the later round picks end up being successful, and that's exactly what's happened for him.